Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Second Page podcast on the R Squared Network. I'm Joseph Oswald, one of your co-hosts today.
And I am Jay Martinez, the other co-host, and welcome to episode 4.
It's episode 4.
We're trying different things now.
Indeed. And with us, as always, our esteemed producer, Steve Johnson, the man behind the R Squared Network.
How you guys doing?
Yeah.
Pretty good, man. How are you?
So welcome to everybody. We appreciate it. Welcome, Steve. Thank you.
All right. So,
take it away, Jay.
Thanks, man. So we're here on our 4th week. We took last week off. I had my daughter's first birthday, Lily. So happy birthday, baby girl.
Happy birthday, Lily.
So some of this will be recapping things that happened on the week of November 7th, which was the big election. So we'll be talking about the November 7th elections, the GOP tax bill, which passed this week in the House and which is up for the vote in the Senate next week. We're going to recap Trump's Asia trip, and we will talk about sexual harassment, which has been the hot button issue in the news. And yeah, so let's start.
Okay. Well, obviously, recapping everything is a big issue. When you talk about taxes, when you talk about the election, which obviously the election leads into taxes because we live in New Jersey. It's the blue state that everybody is saying, is most affected by the tax reform package. A lot of people claim that it is kind of like the age-old saying of robbing Peter to pay Paul, where the red states that take in more federal dollars per dollar they give back to the federal government are basically using the blue states to pay for these things
and fund it.
Basically funding it, and a lot of people interpret this as punishment or retribution for the states that did not electorally college for way of voting for Donald Trump. The bill that passed in the House was completely along party lines. Only 9 Republicans voted against it. Every Democrat voted against it. One of the biggest issues, at least for me personally, was hearing all the closed sessions that the House had. There was almost no hearings on the bill. The Republican GOP silenced almost any bit of opposition, anybody that said anything against it. They kept trying to maintain regular order, and yet all of these bills were proposed and done behind closed doors without any hearings, without asking the public, without town halls or constituencies. I mean, the only thing Paul Ryan did was he went on Fox News and he talked about it, holding up his little 3x5 about how simple he wants to make the taxes.
But real quick, though, we're supposed to be starting with the election.
We are?
Yes.
Well, I thought like I said in the beginning, they kind of blend together. You can't have one without the other.
Okay, so
then Phil Murphy gets elected governor with Sheila Oliver as his lieutenant governor.
Yeah, and he creamed Kim Guadagno.
Yeah,
and
he won by a significant margin.
Yeah, and then Ralph Northman also won in Virginia, which a lot of people
former lieutenant governor.
Yeah, former lieutenant governor, and people thought that was going to be a lot closer. He beat Ed Gillespie, who's he is part of the swamp, by 9 points, which was pretty wild. Yeah. People really thought it was going to be a closer race. And aside from that, the GOP still holds 33 seats out of the 50 governorships, but the Dems did have pretty, a wide sweeping, wins across, state legislators.
They're calling it the Blue Tsunami.
Okay.
Sounds like
tsunami.
a movie. It sounds like a movie they're promoting.
I did not hear that.
We might see that on the reel.
On the reel.
Blue bath. It's like a bloodbath, but blue.
Blue bath.
Blue bath.
See, I was going blue sweep. So I mean, we all had like a different.
Everybody's got their thing as long as you incorporate a color.
But remember, which one started here? It was the Bannonites.
Oh, the Bannonites. Yes, that I coined the term the Bannonites.
But, anyway,
I have thoughts about Steve Bannon this week and the media's treatment of him, but I'll save that
a little for later.
Save that as a nugget.
So we'll make a note of it. But anyway, so real quick, just back to the numbers, and we could get back into what we mean, what happened behind the numbers. Obviously, New Jersey, Virginia, Democrats won the governorships, right?
And then you got smaller elections.
And they won special elections all over the country. In Washington State, the Dems actually took control of all of the, the legislature, the judiciary, and the executive. And right now, there's 9 states that are fully controlled by Democrats. And in Virginia, they actually won a large majority of their House seats within their state legislature, more than they have since the 19th century. So my question to both of you is this. Is this a clear representation of a rebuke of Trump and his policies in the GOP and the state of the party now? Or, as many people are pointing out, a lot of these victories came in blue states, purple states, and very large cities, which tend to be more Democratic than Republican. So,
well, I mean, they're calling it a blue tsunami just because, after Donald Trump was elected, most Democrats and liberals felt like we needed a win, because if they beat us this time, it was a knockout punch. Like, there's almost no chance for 2020 or 2018. the places in Virginia, I think Virginia is a little bit more important to look at than New Jersey because it was a widely expected thing. Phil Murphy started running for governor over a year before the election. He beat Kim Guadagno by a significant margin, but the similarities between the Republican nominees in Virginia and New Jersey were that towards the end, when they both kind of realized I might lose this, they both went for
Nasty.
vitriolic,
Yep.
racist attacks, claiming that, if the Democrat won, that illegal immigrants would just come walking through neighborhoods like militias with guns, just shooting little white children on the street and selling drugs to your grandmother. Basically claiming that MS-13 would take over Virginia and that ISIS was going to take over New Jersey if a Democrat won. And people didn't like that. I think people are starting to realize that if you throw racism and you throw these really aggressive, isolationist, alt-righty type arguments, you're probably going to lose. Now, the key point in Virginia was Democrats didn't necessarily sweep so much as concentrate control. The state got more purple, but got more purple because the Democratic counties got more Democrat. They got more blue, and the red counties got more red. So you have in Virginia the transgender woman who
Danica Roem.
She basically unseated the person who started the bathroom bill rule, and that is, that's how things are starting to look like they're going to get done. Where you have an African American transgender woman, I believe it was Minneapolis.
No. Well, I'm not sure about Minneapolis, but I know that in St. Paul, they elected their first African American mayor in Melvin Carter, and the same thing happened in Charlotte. They elected their first African American woman as mayor. So I mean, these are big wins. Again, they are blue cities. Big. Well, I'm not so sure about St. Paul. I'm not too versed in the red or blue of Minnesota and that city, but I mean that's a big win for Democrats as well. I do want to say I had the pleasure of meeting Vi Lyles, the woman that won in Charlotte. I went on a work trip with her to Cuba. Met a lot of the people that work in the Charlotte City Council, and these people really care about their city. They care about their constituents. And when I woke up this morning and read about her winning, I was very happy because I mean these are the type of people that we need in office now, especially in the climate that we're in and where the GOP the playbook seems to be divisiveness. It's pitting one against the other and scaring people into voting. And I think like you just said, I think people are starting to see above that, see through it. And it worked for Trump. It really did. But I think too many people within the GOP are hoping that playbook works for them in local and statewide elections, and that's not the case. It can't work like that.
I just in the spirit of fairness.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's totally fair that the GOP won. And I'll say this right here. I have no qualm saying it. I voted Democrat, right?
Yeah.
And I've voted Democrat for quite a while now. But that said, this what happened on this Tuesday on the 7th was people voting out of fear. People just a different fear.
So fear for Trump.
Fear of what or Gillespie. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So it is. What are they going to do? I'm afraid what they're going to take away.
It's fear and hunger that motivate people to do anything. It's
right.
Fear and hunger.
I don't know if it's so we can like again, the GOP has been very divisive, but to say that getting people to vote out of fear is a bad thing. Maybe it is, but that's what works, and that's what everyone's doing.
Okay, it's a different kind of fear.
Yeah, I think
it's a different type of fear.
I think that fear that maybe the blue side is feeling, or the Democrats, the liberal wing, whatever you want to call it, is a natural response to the state of our country that we never thought we'd be in this position that we're in now. The divisiveness and the fear that the GOP push forward is something that they plan, something that they hope works, and something that they're feeding off of the base fears of some of their constituents, which not all white people feel this way. I think the majority of white people are good people, not racist. But there is this base within the U.S. right now, this nationalist, pro-white, they're worried they're going to be a minority type thing. And I think
are minorities treated badly in America?
I don't. Are they? Why are they
know.
worried?
I mean, I don't know why you're worried.
But I think that's a fear that the GOP is trying to tap into, and that's different than the fear that you're talking about. I agree with you. There's definitely fear. It's just a fear as a response, not a fear as a tool. And I think that's a difference.
It's a fear as a response, not fear as a tool. Same thing that people did during Obama Obama's generation, where they kept saying that the ACA was going to form these death panels that were going to decide whether your grandma gets to live or die.
Yeah.
And like I said in previous episodes, it's your puppies, your kids, and your grandma. That's what people care about the most, and that's how you get them to pay attention. So what Democrats use and liberals use to make people afraid and go out to vote is Trump is going to win. He's going to destroy everything. You have to go out and vote because you have to save what you believe and hold true to yourself.
Yeah.
Whereas it would seem that the fear tactics of the GOP is, you know, transgenders in the bathroom are going to molest your child, or, you know, if you don't
gays
vote,
can't serve in the military,
or if you don't vote Republican, then MS-13
we're
and
going to
ISIS
open
are
up the
going to take
borders and
over.
they're going to come and
Mexicans
rape
are
and
going to
pillage.
flow across the Rio Grande and take all of your jobs. Like they're appealing to the fear of in your soul, and liberals seem to be appealing to the fear in your heart. You know, where we're afraid of losing things, and we are always willing to do something to make us not afraid.
Yeah.
Now, I've voted Republican before for some things. I voted for Chris Christie the first time, not the second. But I don't see, maybe I do see where you both come from and where other people like you come from. You know, where you just vote down the line. You know, I'm not so much one of these people, like, you know, we'll mention it a little bit later in the show, like the governor of Alabama, who's more for the party than for the people they represent, and they have no problem saying it.
Yeah.
I just don't understand how, you know, when you have elections like this on November 7th, where Democrats did sweep pretty much everything, you know, now you put fear into Republicans where they're like, oh crap, we might lose our Senate seats, we might lose what we've basically held on to, and they are afraid of now losing power. And the fear of losing power can be a strong motivator to go even harder.
Yeah.
That's why you attack people like the Al Frankens. That's why you go for the jugular when it comes to hypocrisy, where you're perfectly willing to attack someone for something that you or someone you support has done, and you're not even willing to talk about it.
And to go off of that point, I mean, the governors, Republican governors all across the country met this past week, and a big part of the discussion was that they're scared. They don't know how to move forward because they did not think that Ed Gillespie was going to lose as bad as he did. They, you know, they, like you said, New Jersey, they knew it was not a toss-up. It was going to go Phil Murphy, not an issue there. But they're worried now. They're worried how much Trump is going to affect down ballot voting in 2018. They're worried about donors, because now there's this whole thing where if, you know, the Congress doesn't do what they want, donors are withholding money. So like you said,
Lindsey Graham.
there is a fear within the GOP right now, and I think it's a good thing. And in my opinion, moving off of this topic, is that I do think it was a rebuke on Trump. I think, to Steve's point, it was a vote out of fear, but a vote out of fear as a reaction to Trump's policy, his rhetoric, the direction of the country that it's gone on after November 7th. November 9th, 8th, 2016. And I hope to see this. I hope to see a surge go into the 2018 midterms. I think there's a good chance we can take the Senate, maybe even possibly the House.
You need like 30 seats for the House.
And so Steve doesn't agree.
No, you're very right in that, but at the same time, you have to understand that anytime you're in an off year, whoever is in the White House, generally the party loses, and some
it
seats
happened
and
in
such
Obama's
like
first. It happened in 2010 after
it
Obama's.
happened way worse than Obama. But it's most Democrats, most liberals are painting every single Republican candidate
as a Trump
with the Trump brushstroke, whether or not they actually believe it. That's why Trump said what he said while he was in Asia about Ed Gillespie, that he didn't embrace me, so therefore he lost. Even though people that are embracing him are losing even worse.
And now these down ballot candidates have to tiptoe the line of how much do I embrace Trump, which policies do I embrace, and what do my constituents want. And he's making it hard for them to kind of reconcile and toe that line. And so ultimately, what do you both agree in then? Was it a rebuke of Trump? I think that's how you feel. What do you think, Steve?
I don't know. I think that's a bit of a stretch to say that's how I feel.
I'm sorry. No, then.
I think that in the grand scheme of things, like every smaller election is now a national election, right? Every local election.
It's a good way of putting it.
Election.
That may be a really good thing.
And you know, we saw like general election level turnouts for this. The only thing that if you want to know what my thoughts are, I see a lot of Democrats patting themselves back, like, you know, we did it, but like, will that momentum keep up, right? Because, you know, these off-year elections usually don't do well for Democrats, right? Like, are we gonna keep that momentum up, or will people still be excited or energized when 2018 comes around?
And how do you think they should keep that momentum up?
Well, I mean, firstly, you could have an actual direction for what the party wants. Like, I don't know. I
We
don't
can't end
know.
up like an obstructionist Congress that
Well, you
Obama had, where they
can because
just fight, fight, fight with no real plan or
here's the
goal.
thing though, that worked,
It
and they
well,
won him everything.
yeah, because it was anger, but now they have no direction. They haven't been able to accomplish anything.
It worked
I
till
mean,
it didn't.
like when
Sorry
you
tomorrow,
say,
but you need to get to the election. So you can be. I'm sorry, but you can be an obstructionist right now. And when you get in office, just make sure your plan is in place. Like that's what where the Republicans went
well,
wrong. And I hate to be cynical about it, but
no, you don't.
that is what happened, right? So it got them the midterm elections. It got them in control of the House and the Senate and the executive office, and provided hopefully Ruth Bader Ginsburg stays with us.
She's promised to
But
stay as long as she could, so God bless her
but
heart.
I'm
you
pretty
know,
sure she
it
will be the
could
first zombie, just to
right.
make sure.
But you know, or something could happen with Kennedy. He wanted to retire the other day. Or
Yeah, that would
my
be
point
bad.
is,
No.
Yeah.
they could have won the executive branch, the legislature, and the Supreme Court just off of their cynical tactics. They, as you say, Joe, they stole a judge
Yeah.
seat
Mhm.
in the Supreme Court.
Mhm.
So why not do it?
But what have they
You're right.
accomplished so far, though?
Well,
I
see,
mean,
he said, Democrats are walking around patting themselves on the back as
Prematurely.
prematurely, as if we had this big thing, and they're talking about this blue tsunami, this blue wave, whatever you want to call it. But that's just like patting yourself on the back for the ebb and flow of the ocean, because it will always just keep going in,
high
keep
tide,
going
low
back,
tide,
keep
high
going and
tide.
keep going
Yeah.
back. You can't take responsibility for something that was probably just going to happen anyway.
Anyway,
You
And
mean
if
like
you
the
do take,
year increase in the stock market?
oh yeah, I mean, I've
which now
had,
Trump is taking credit for,
I've
even
had
though it was all under Obama.
I've had like legitimate arguments with people on things like Facebook and stuff. And anytime I have a debate or something, I like to keep it in a debate format. I don't like to use much profanity. I don't like to belittle anybody or say anything like that. And I will say I am guilty of it sometimes. I have a slight tinge of hypocrisy every once in a while, but I try to backtrack it, and I don't mind being called out for anything. So when I see people that are just ardent supporters of Donald Trump saying things like million new jobs and the stock market all-time high and the manufacturing index is this, and unemployment is low and all these things, I'm like, not withstanding the fact that the new budget didn't start until October 1st, but none of these people are spewing anything but surface level facts that yes, they are true, that we are at all-time highs for the stock market where the unemployment is low, but they don't ask themselves for 1 second how we got there in the first place. Just like nobody did anything when George Bush got elected with Bill Clinton's surplus, or when Obama was elected and had to deal with a recession. Nobody gave him credit for that. They said it was all his fault. They said
Okay.
the recession was Obama's fault, and that the bailouts were wrong.
The
and,
the 08 recession, right?
Yeah, the
That was
08
not
well,
his
the
fault.
08 recession led to the
stimulus
09.
package wasn't a thing that passed under Obama. Like he had to manage it, but that
The stimulus
Well,
package started at the end of Bush. He
and
signed it.
passed by Bush, and then the auto one was passed,
The
the
TARP
Detroit
bills
bailout.
and the other things like that, the other
That
bailouts,
was all under Obama.
they were all under Obama, a person who just got into office and was tasked with basically saving the largest economy on earth from completely collapsing. And for all intents and purposes, whether you agree with the tactics or not, or the outcome, it did succeed. There are many different paths to success. I mean, every teacher tells you there are tons of different ways to get to the same point. So he did it. He got there somehow. They may have bailed out some things, but we got our money back. The taxpayers were repaid, and sometimes with interest. They rebought back the stock and from the automakers, and now they're doing great. Now they're doing fantastic. And then we have a tax bill now that wants to...
Perfect segue.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to do.
Now we have the tax bill now that basically wants to tell all these people who were saved by the government, who were saved by a liberal outlook and a democratic approach to taxes and to regulation. They were saved by it. The American people were protected with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, with the regulation of banks, the Dodd-Frank type bills. They were protected and saved, and now that we're safe, now that the storm is blown over, now they want to go back and destroy everything. They want to dismantle regulations because they say somehow in the largest economy on earth, with corporations with the most money they've ever had, with the wealthiest people having the most wealth they've ever had, that somehow they're being strangled. Somehow, because of all this regulation, they don't have enough when they have more than they've ever had. So that argument is completely moot. That Orrin Hatch can have an argument on the floor of the Senate saying that it's malarkey, that it's crap, that's bull crap. the Democrats keep going after the whole idea that Republicans only support the rich, when you just have pages and pages and pages of information showing that it does not benefit the middle class. You can double the standard deduction for regular people, but you take away all their other tax credits, and you basically you've just cut yourself twice.
All right.
The private jets. You can write off a private jet, but a teacher cannot write off buying supplies for her students.
Okay.
You can write off a business that you do not directly control and tax it at your personal income tax level instead of the corporate tax level, as long as you actually don't do the work.
Okay, so let's do this a little bit just to give people perspective, because I'm one of those people out there that really, I have a hard time grasping the nuances of the tax bill, which I think happens to a lot of people. You seem to have a pretty good understanding of them. So one thing, go through the vote, how many Republicans, how many Democrats, and do we think that the Senate will fall in line and, reconcile the bill and pass their version? I know there's already Senator Ron Johnson.
They're only using reconciliation because it's the only way to pass on a simple majority.
Yes. And then, so I guess break it down for people, what are the major changes in this bill,
the major
and what isn't bullet points,
bullet points.
Yeah, and then
I just want to add one, and maybe this was on your list, but hey, are you a student? Have you ever borrowed money to go to school?
I have.
I don't know. Does $1 trillion in student loan debt participate?
Because with this bill, you can't anymore.
Yeah, and that sucks.
But
like we said, it's in the beginning we mentioned robbing Peter to pay Paul. This looks like on the front a bill specifically designed to benefit the Trumps of the world, in that billionaires will be able to continue letting their money be inherited down the line, where you have maybe 3,000 people affected by the estate tax.
Seems like 5% of people in the country every year.
It's not even. But you're talking about saying that they somehow need this tax break, but middle class Americans, people that own homes and want to write off the interest on their mortgage, or students who borrowed money to go to school to make their lives better, somehow don't deserve to write off that. Because if they couldn't afford to go to school in the first place and had to take out a loan, somehow they have too much. It doesn't make sense. That is not for the people. That is not, like the Constitution says, providing for the general welfare. That is giving away money to people who don't need it because they are in power, because they have the ability to. They're not doing it because they have to. They're doing it because they can.
And they're looking out for their own self-interest, for the interest of their donors and their friends.
Which is why you get a private jet write-off, which is why you get an inheritance tax they basically double the limit, and the Senate doesn't repeal it, but the House bill does. By 2023, it is just completely gone. They get rid of the estate tax. That's not helping anybody except for people who already have enough to help themselves.
And from the Tax Policy Center, so we can have some numbers to kind of give some perspective, the tax cut winners are the top 0.1%. They'll be saving in the amount of $722,000 per year. The top 1% is estimated at $130,000 per year, while the top fifth is $8,500 per year.
Okay, well, I need to put a little bit of a caveat on that. You can read those numbers, and it's just like when people decide to use whole numbers rather than percentages.
I have the percentages if you want them.
You probably should, because if you think about it, if someone's making $1 million or $1 billion a year, them saving $700,000 is just the same as someone who makes $10,000 a year saving $700.
Okay, so top 0.1%, they're saving 10.2%. Top 1% are saving 8.5%. The top fifth, 3.3%. Those are the three highest. Everyone else falls under 2%, and the average for all taxpayers in the country would be a 2.1% save. Tax,
which adds $1.5 trillion to the national debt, which we obviously don't need to do. We're over $20 trillion as it is,
and which has always been a GOP thing that you don't want to increase the deficit.
Yeah, how long did they threaten to shut down the government because we wanted to raise the debt ceiling?
And now they're increasing the deficit.
Hey guys, that doesn't matter. And
they're in
these
power.
Numbers you cite, what is that?
The Tax Policy Center,
partisan organization.
Quote unquote.
Wink. I hope you didn't catch that on camera. When you talk about the two bills that are being proposed, the House bill reduces everything down to 4 tax brackets, the 12, the 25, the whatever, and the Senate keeps all 7 of the original tax brackets. The House bill eliminates the estate tax and doubles the limits for it, eliminating it by 2023. The Senate bill doubles the limit but does not eliminate it.
Which gives it a chance to grow after 10 years, right? Exactly. It's not like that whole constraint.
And when you talk about cutting the corporate tax rate from 35 to 20%, not that they actually pay that. Most people don't even realize. Like I just asked you to put the caveat that what does $700,000 mean to a billionaire? When you talk about the actual tax rate versus the net tax rate, where they're paying maybe 2% of their profits in taxes because of all the write-offs that they get. They can
And
write
some
off,
companies end up paying zero.
and some companies end up paying zero or
Exxon.
negative tax rate, where they're actually getting paid to be here.
Yeah.
Where Amazon's headquarters can move to a place and they get a 10-year tax abatement, or where in Jersey City you've got the Kushner and the Trumps trying to build a tower and they want a 20-year tax abatement, where somehow these places that are using the most resources, despite the fact that they may be providing some jobs, somehow shouldn't be paying their fair share of anything. And that's what riles the majority of people. That's what riles liberals and Democrats and some moderate Republicans, is that these are people who, if you were running this country like your home, you would not be giving them these things. You don't take the person who has the most candy on Halloween and take the people that have a couple pieces of candy and say, you know what, he needs more, or else he's not going to be happy, and because he's not happy, suddenly we won't have any jobs. When most billionaires provide maybe 3-4% of the workforce.
So I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
I think it's important to understand, and I don't think this will happen, because another thing that should talk about is how recently they've added the Affordable Care Act, getting rid of
the sneaky repeal,
the
sneaky
individual
repeal,
mandate.
And apparently it's to help with that 1.5 trillion to pay for it, right?
So I think it's important to understand, if this passes, and it's already passed in the House.
Yeah, and there's only one person in the Senate.
It was shoved down their throats in closed meetings and whatnot. They didn't let any debate.
I think that we have to understand that this will adversely affect the constituents of the people in the GOP that are voting for these, and they'll support it and they'll cheer it on. And a lot of what we saw with the Tea Party, this is just something to talk about, right? They're not voting for this because they care about the nuances of tax law. It is what their tribe is going for, and the other sides hate it, don't like it, and so because the other side doesn't like it, they must like it. And that's what's happening with a lot of these things, where this thing will hurt you and you vote for it anyway because it serves tribe as opposed to you individually. I don't know how someone who makes less than $70,000, worse, less than $30,000, whose taxes have been proved will increase, will go and cheer this thing on.
Yeah.
And they get like applause for these things, and their tribe is just going to be like, well, this is what we're doing. I don't care. If the other guys didn't like it, then I must be for it. And so
to your point, and I'm glad you mentioned this, because I think it's two things. One, I don't understand how, like you said, their tribe, right? The people that back them. For someone like me, because I admittedly do not understand the tax system, the nuances, I have a base understanding of it. And I can clearly see how this isn't good. Many government agencies, policy centers have come out and saying that this is not a tax bill that will benefit the middle or working class. It only benefits the rich. Then how can the GOP get behind it? It boggles my mind. Not the GOP. I know how they can get behind it. How can their voters get behind it? It boggles my mind. And the other point I wanted to make, I'm kind of losing my track here, is damn, I kind of lost that point. Damn. I'll get back to you guys.
It's hard to.
I had something there.
Completely reasonable for anybody that wants to talk about taxes, because how do you go to a small town in Nebraska or Kansas or Texas and start throwing numbers at somebody who just doesn't care about numbers? Most Republicans, most conservatives care about social issues, whereas most GOPers, most elected Republicans care about the tax code, stuff like that, only to the effect that they care about how much their donors are telling them they're going to give or not give to them next election cycle.
I don't know if that's all true, because I know a lot of people supposedly, especially the Democrats that flipped and voted for Trump this election cycle, did it because they thought they were losing their jobs and then the economy was going the wrong way, even though everything indicated it wasn't. So I do think they have some sense of they're worried about their jobs and their livelihoods. But the point I want to go back to that I was trying to make before was that they need a win. The GOP needs a win before the end of 2017. And this is the closest that they've gotten to a legislative agenda passed under Trump, which they haven't done
Okay,
yet.
so where's the infrastructure bill that we were
It-
promised within 30
that
days?
would actually help, or the
That
coal
would
mine.
Democrats would vote for that. Democrats absolutely would vote for
But like
spending.
Steve just said, they don't care. They need a win. It's their tribe. It helps. We still have not seen Donald Trump's tax returns, right? We don't know how it affects him, but we know it will help him. Why hasn't he showed his tax returns, right? Because it would probably even make the argument easier for people that that are detractors to this bill. And Steve, I don't know if you've put it up yet. If you haven't, please do, and then let me know the numbers because I don't remember them. The poll that came out, I think it's 52 or 53% of Americans disapprove of this bill, and yet the GOP is passing it. In any other, in what politics was before 2008, and maybe even after that, that would have been a death sentence. And they're just willing to like say this is a great thing and we're passing it, even though 52% of our country disapproves.
Because such a
I
strong
don't
majority
get it. I don't get it.
of the people that are in office that are under the moniker or the banner of Trump and the Republicans, they are not necessarily listening to the constituents. These are people who do not hold their town halls, who have been, or who are quote unquote elitists, who are just been in office for so long, like the Mitch McConnells of the world, who just don't care what the people think. They know that they're solid. Districts are gerrymandered to the point where all they have to worry about is a primary, if anything. That's what Steve Bannon is threatening them with. That's what he says. We'll primary you. It's not like saying we'll support the Democrat, because that won't mean anything. It won't mean anything to support the opponent in the general election. It means everything to take away their seat. To say, like when Eric Cantor lost his seat to Tea Party enthusiasts because he was being too much of a traditional conservative Republican. He lost his seat. John Boehner lost his speakership and seat because he kept going down the line of trying to maintain the republicanism of the Reagan era and the Bush era, not realizing that the angry Trump voter who thinks that the whole world is against them and that everybody's terrible and anything that even remotely smells like a liberal is trying to destroy us. These people aren't going to care about the tax code. They're not going to care about that kind of stuff when, if they win, that means they also get things like overturning Roe versus Wade, or the Brown versus Board of Education, when they can get things like, the trucking industry being able, not having to pay out these lawsuits and stuff like that. When they can get the social things that they want, they're not going to care about some liberal in New York City that's going to be worried about not being able to afford their home now that they can't write off their mortgage interest because, I live in a place where rent's $500 a month and I've got 4 bedrooms and I don't care. My life is fine. So screw you, right?
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. If it is a calculated risk, I think they've taken the wrong calculations in mind. But I think it's an ill-advised risk that the GOP is taking right before 2018 because I don't know how long it's going to take for the tax bill to take effect and for us to feel the effects of it within the economy in our own pockets. I don't know the nuances of that. But when it does, it's going to be evident that the middle class lost. It might not be felt by 2018, but it might be felt by 2020. And is one legislative win or them supporting their donors enough to risk them losing their seats? Because like you just said, they're getting primaried by their own side.
Oh,
and
okay. So 2 things. I think it is important to understand that hypocrisy does not matter.
No, hell
right? So
either party.
So the idea that this thing will affect them adversely, and this will turn around and hurt the GOP, no, it won't. No, it won't. And here's why.
Okay.
The idea that people could be so mad at Democrats being corrupt, but don't care about seeing Trump's taxes, even though he said he would release them, right? The idea that people are upset about Al Franken, but willing to hold their nose or not even care about Roy Moore
or Trump.
This won't have an effect because they'll just blame it on the Democrats if it doesn't work. That's what will happen, right? So and furthermore, you mentioned Steve Bannon. I want to float an idea out here. What if Steve Bannon is just a hack, right? Like he got fired within 6 months from the White House. He's now back in.
He got fired or resigned?
He got fired.
Fired.
He resigned but got fired.
Who is likely a pedophile. Like what exactly has he done other than get some Seinfeld money and start a propaganda blog?
I don't know if he's a hack. I mean, I don't think he's.
I think it is beneficial for the media because we need a bad guy and we need
to vilify
Joffrey,
him.
So we need to make him look like he's Darth Plagueis.
Yeah.
Because
Well, his hero is Darth Vader, and that's on the record.
But
it is it's good for a narrative. But how, like, are we giving this guy too much credit?
No,
how,
I think he's getting the credit he actually deserves.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think we're giving him too much credit. I don't think we should go over. I don't think we should give him too much credit.
He's someone to be reckoned with.
Yeah, and he has a
hack.
plan, and that's the scary part. Your issue right now with the Democrats is that we don't have a leader, we don't have a plan. For better or worse, we don't agree with him. The guy has a plan. Whether it will work, we don't know.
I mean,
because that's why he left the White House.
To primary the elite, the moderates in Congress, to put people in Congress in positions. So his vision, the extreme right wing vision.
Evidence of this work?
He became a private citizen specifically to go back to Breitbart. His partner Mercer has sold his share, and it's leaving Steve Bannon in complete control of a media outlet that now has a huge platform because of Donald Trump.
No, and he was a Trump supporter from the get. He wrote a lot of pieces supporting Trump, and Trump won. I'm not saying he won because of Bannon, but Bannon kind of saw the horse, what horse would win before most people did. He worked for the administration, tried to push some agendas, got pulled back, got fired.
Why he still backs Roy Moore?
Which one of his agendas moved forward?
None really, but he's putting people in positions.
He's backing Roy Moore, who is now
who beat Luther
10.
Strange.
Okay, but now he's behind by what, like double digits?
Yeah, but I wouldn't trust the polls in Alabama.
None of your policies got pushed through in the White House, and you got fired.
But it's been 1 year.
Is he that important?
It's been. Yeah, I think he is.
I think we're giving him power by saying like he's this Svengali.
Listen,
just because he hasn't won yet doesn't mean he's not on the path or he has a plan. That's the part that's scary. I'm not saying he's done anything. Yeah,
he is. Look at all we have 100
and he's challenging
vacant
8 out of the
judgeships.
9 Senate seats. So I mean,
exactly, he's primarying the people that disagreed with Trump. He's getting all the vacant judgeships that were left with under Obama because the Senate just refused to hear and advice and consent. He is getting all these little subtle wins, and while we're being distracted by the little gaffes here and there, and by the sexual harassment stuff, and by gun violence and stuff, we're being distracted while judgeships are being filled by people who have no experience, who wrote for Breitbart, who supported the president, who were against Hillary Clinton, who were perfectly fine peddling fake news.
The fact that Breitbart is on a standing with CNN and Fox News and people talk about it like it's a major publication, that in itself is a win. The fact that people like Richard Spencer have a platform is a win for nationalists like him. Maybe he didn't start the nationalist movement. He's jumped on it. And right now he's a de facto leader. And the scary part is maybe not by face, but I think he's pulling strings behind the curtain. And that's the scary part.
Okay, so I believe in speaking truth to power.
Okay.
And I believe that you can make anyone more grandiose by just speaking about them in a certain way. And the way people could argue that the media giving Trump all that coverage as though he was a serious candidate turned him into a serious candidate.
Okay.
And if we're giving, my question is, are we doing that again with Steve Bannon?
Well, see, that's different. That way, the way you put it that time, I don't necessarily disagree with you. Although I do respectfully disagree with your idea that Bannon is not to be taken as seriously. That he's a hack. I don't think he is. Hack with Seinfeld money. Regardless of that, he is not being overt, because that's how you get caught. You work in the shadows, you stay in the shadows, and you stay alive. You stay safe. You stay powerful. It's why I think he left the White House. I don't think he left on bad terms. I think he left to be a private citizen so that he's not beholden to the ethics rules of the White House, so that he can't be investigated by Congress or called.
Yeah, he was frustrated in the White House. He couldn't really push his agenda the way he thought. He was getting pushback. He failed in that attempt. I don't think he's failed overall yet. And to your point before, just as my closing argument, at least for this.
That'll be another failure.
What?
I'm
Roy Moore?
Where the wins are.
The midterms are coming up. We'll see then. He's challenging 8 out of the 9 seats.
We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. And then to your point, that you were making before about the GOP and the hypocrisy, I think when it matters, people do point the finger at the right culprits. And I think if it hurts your job, how much you're making, and your family and your way of life, there'd be enough pushback. Maybe not by everyone within the party or within the tribe.
It's all about who you blame for this.
But I think enough people will blame the correct culprits, which will be the GOP. Not everyone.
What evidence is given? Like, what evidence
You don't need
do you have for
evidence. Everybody loves scapegoating. Humans
Yeah,
have been
I
littered our entire history
No,
with
I understand
scapegoating
that.
someone
What
for
the-
something
what-
else.
I'm
what
saying
you
you
have-
can just blame that
yeah,
on
but
someone.
you have the numbers there. How many Democrats voted for this? None, right?
Zero. It was
Zero.
0 plus 9 Republicans voted
Voted,
against the bill, but
exactly.
it still passed.
So I mean, you have to be completely ignorant, and I'm really sorry if I'm insulting anyone out there right now, to if in 4 years this comes back and bites us in the ass to say that it was the Democrats' fault. I mean, you're just willfully ignorant to not look up the fact that no Democrat voted for it. And there are people, I agree, there are, but I think enough will see through that shit and blame who.
Why do you?
What, I believe that?
The people that cared about, like, where's the Tea Party right now, right?
The
That
Tea
cared
Party
about-
blended into the GOP.
Yeah, they're
Okay,
taking
but
control. They
those
splintered the
people,
party.
Why did they say they came about? Because they cared about the deficit, right?
Yeah, and they're the same ones voting for it now.
Right.
Yeah,
Now, people that are losing their jobs because of globalization, and people that are losing their jobs because of policies like letting big corporations do what they want, and people that are losing their protections because they're getting rid of unions en masse, do they blame the Democrats for that or the Republicans for that?
They
Right,
blame
these are- we're
people in
talking
they
about-
blame whoever's in power at the time. They blame
which
the
is
person in power. They blame it doesn't matter about their party necessarily. It just so happens that whoever they're blaming, the party they're associated with also gets some of the blame. It's trickle down blame-onomics.
which is why the midterms work the way they do, and it kind of always
Mhm.
works against the administration or the party in power. And in the same token, everything you said, you're right. But some of those things get complicated. I think something like the tax bill, which is complicated in itself, is just such a big issue on its own that it stands alone. That if that becomes something bad, it's already been tied in. I mean, the media's telling you it's bad. People are just ignoring it. I don't know why, but it's being ignored. But that in itself can stand. When you talk about coal miners losing their jobs, that's something small. When you're talking about job losses in certain parts of the country because of whatever failed policies, those are things that are really little that people really might not grasp unless you're in that part of the country being affected by it firsthand. This will, I think, affect a lot of us
I
in a
think
negative
that-
way.
I think that it is very optimistic to think that people will put one and two together.
I'm an optimistic
I
person.
think that,
Well, it
I
seems
think
like it's
that we
working
have
in the
not
rest of the
seen-
world. I mean, you've got
Yeah,
things
but
like the
this is
Paris
not the-
Agreement, the
this is not-
TPP Agreement, all these things where everybody else, even if we're talking about totalitarian countries all across Asia and far left countries all throughout Europe,
Syria now.
they're all in agreement, and we are standing alone, just like we're using the imperial system instead of the metric system. I mean, this can segue into our Asia topic with his trip, because he went over there to try and promote this idea of American first. And I will tell you, I actually got one bit out of that where I kind of agree with him, where he said when he was in China that the Chinese people need to be put first when you're talking about the Chinese government. Xi Jinping needs to put the Chinese people first, and the Vietnamese people need to put themselves first, just like Americans need to put ourselves first.
Okay.
So when we go over there to sell them our guns, to tell them that North Korea is going to nuke them all, so Japan, buy our guns. They bought our guns. South Korea, buy our guns and pay for this military base. They bought the base. They bought the guns. You go to Vietnam. You say, we need better trade with you. And they basically got it. He goes to the Philippines and says, we want this, this, and this. And they give it to him because they all want to pander. He wants only bilateral negotiations because bullies like bilateral negotiations. They like being the only other person in the room.
Okay,
If
well-
you have other people in the room, a bully is less effective.
Let's backtrack a bit. For whoever doesn't know what we're talking about or what's going on, President Trump went on a 12-day visit to Asia, which is his first major trip since July. He visited, I think, 5 countries, North Korea.
No.
I'm sorry.
he bitched about North Korea a lot.
Yeah, South Korea, Vietnam,
to
the
DMZ,
Philippines,
that-
China, and Japan, right?
Yes.
Yeah. He met with all these leaders, like you just said. The TPP came up a lot. He was pushing for bilateral versus multilateral relations when it comes to trade, and I think I'm gonna go through this quick. There's not a lot I really have to say about this. I think it's important to talk about because it's a big trip for him. It matters that our president went over Asia, and just because right now, Obama pivoted to Asia because of the importance he felt that Asia is going to have in the economy in the next century, and I think it's true.
Mm-hmm.
And which is why the TPP came about, and Trump took us out of it. So the big news, the only thing I think that really came out of this trip for me that was important is that every other country that was part of the TPP, which I think is 11 nations, are now moving
They're moving
forward,
forward.
are moving forward without the U.S. They're leaving an opening for if Trump or a future U.S. administration wants to join it, that they can. But then we're going to be playing catch up. We talked about this a little bit on the way here.
It's ascending to a treaty, and it kind of makes you subservient, where you have to like
you're going to be the bitch for a while.
You gotta you basically you're being jumped into this gang.
And the importance of Asia is that it has the quickest growing economies of the last, I think, 2 decades, right? India, China, Australia's up there.
1/6 of the world's population is just right there in India and China.
So I think it's a huge mistake Trump taking us out. No deal is perfect. I know he considers himself the deal maker, but I think that all of these countries moving forward with the TPP is a big problem, and it sucks that we're going to play from behind. And then just to sum up the rest of the trip, it freaking seemed like everyone was just kissing his ass. He loved it. I don't think he made a major gaffe, so I'll give him credit on that one. And I kind of like the way that he talked about North Korea. I mean, his rhetoric has always been tough. It's been stupid at points. I don't think he crossed the stupid part, like the stupid line, when he was over there.
He had a lot of handlers.
And I really think that we do have to be a little tough with them right now. Threatening military nuclear options is dumb. Should not be on the table, but we do need to be strong with them at this point. And that's one thing I kind of agreed in the direction he went on. But overall, I think it was a pageant trip for him. He got his hands shook. He had
Duterte singing to him,
and the military pageantry that went on, and it helped his ego. But I think overall it was an uneventful trip, and it hurt our position in Asia. That's what I have to say.
With a lot of the stuff we've talked about today, you have to look at the underlying thing. With regards to the TPP, it reminds me so much of the early 20th century with regards to the United States trying to form the League of Nations. We form it, and then all of a sudden the Congress doesn't accede to it, and then they move forward without us. And maybe they were successful for a little bit, but then it started another world war, which was the whole reason it was supposed to be formed in the first place. And because we isolated ourselves and we went and we were in a recession or depression, we weren't effective as a world leader that we should have been and could have been. So now we leave this agreement because Trump saw Obama's name on it.
The Trans-Pacific Partnership, right?
Exactly. So these other 11 countries are now going to move forward with this big, huge agreement, this free trade zone. And while there were some bad parts about it, like basically arbitration, where if a business felt that any one country's environmental rules were negatively affecting their profits, they could sue outside, go to an outside tribunal. They can go to a tribunal in the Philippines, and the United States could be held accountable for that business and have to pay them, blah, blah, blah. I get that. That's a really hard issue for any country to swallow, because sovereignty is the most important part about being a nation state.
It should be.
So we leave this agreement, even though there's room to join back in, but it's so much harder to join something that you started after and then left than to have joined it from the very beginning. So all these countries are now going to have this free trade enterprise, and we're going to be looking at it like, should we have done that? Like, what did we do here? What did we do wrong? But they're not going to look at it like that way, because he's going to say, oh, well, we saved all these jobs from going overseas,
which isn't true. Yeah.
Most job loss is because of automation. I mean, the word sabotage in general is a Dutch word that comes from when Dutch workers would throw their wooden shoes into the machines called sabot, and they would destroy the machines because the machines were taking their jobs. So, that basically the sabotage was taking place by people who were afraid. It goes back to fear. People are afraid of losing their jobs. They're afraid of not being the best. Do you think
it'll hurt our economy?
They're afraid of North Korea. And yes, it absolutely will hurt our economy, because now, where we used to be the biggest trading partners for some of these people, they're now just going to be trading with each other
and not us.
And not us. They won't need us before, and that's why Trump wants bilateral talks, because he thinks that if we're the only other one in the room, then we can get the deal that we want. But where's the deal? It's not like trade is like America is selling stuff to Vietnam and Vietnam's buying stuff from America. It's American
global
businesses.
Yeah.
It's the little people. It's these people. It's Apple. It's IBM. It's all these people selling their stuff. But if Trump really wanted to effectuate that stuff, we would pass laws for repatriating money in the Cayman Islands and the Bermuda, or we would pass laws that tax companies that leave the United States and move jobs to places where there are low standards for safety or for workers' rights. Let's hold ourselves up to them. Yeah, we're gonna put taxes on Trump ties.
Yeah,
that's a good alliteration, actually. We can move away from the Asia topic. Obviously, it wasn't the most important thing, but
no, yeah.
I don't know if you guys realize this, but Donald Trump has fixed Asia.
He fixed it. Asia
So
is better.
according to him,
Asia is so good now. You can fight a land war there.
right? Look, according to Donald Trump,
No, that's why we have drones.
Our great country is respected again. You will see the fruits of our long and successful trip for many years to come.
That fruit is poison.
He's a megalomaniac. He's reacting to the pageantry and all these leaders. For him not to see that this was just a manipulation by these Asian leaders to kind of feel him out and then be able to,
because they're about to go into bilateral talks.
He owes Xi Jinping now a favor, because he released.
They would have released those basketball players
exactly
anyway.
without, and you know what, I think as a president he had the right to do it, but then the way he patted himself on the back at the time of which he did
Bill
it,
Clinton
he's
didn't do
owing
that.
a favor.
George Bush didn't do that. Carter didn't do that. All these people that got hostages released, they didn't pat themselves on the back. They accepted the fact that that was their duty as the president of this country. You protect your citizens.
Yeah, I think overall, the trip in itself was a failure in pushing forward a really an American first agenda. I think he talked about it, but I don't see how it does, because it hurts workers. It's going to hurt the economy. And then the only upside I can see of it is he didn't act like a complete moron in the world stage.
I would argue that he did, but sure.
I mean, you can make that argument. It's fine.
Anybody can.
But I'm also saying that because the bar's so low.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm just saying he didn't do something completely out of dumb.
He basically just took a trip to Asia,
and he did,
and he came back.
And he pretty much stuck to their talking points and what they believe in. America first, blah blah blah. Here and bye.
I really actually liked a tweet by Stephen Colbert, who tweeted to @RealDonaldTrump. While you were gone, we started prosecuting people for sexual harassment and misconduct. So just a heads up.
Yeah.
Which I think
you're coming back.
It's very important because, you have the most powerful person in our society, accused several times over of something like this. And whether we accuse him of being a tax dodger or a draft dodger or any of these things he's dodging, when people look at America, they now see Donald Trump. Yeah, but they think America, they think Donald Trump. And that's all he wanted.
Yeah, it's not even accused either. I mean, the words, I came at her like a bitch.
Mm-hmm.
When I see a hot woman, I can't help myself. I need to kiss her. That's probably paraphrasing right there.
No, I think you got that word for word.
I grabbed her by the pussy. I mean, like...
You can do that when you're a star.
That, again, boggles my mind because there's a good amount of women in the U.S. that voted for this guy.
You know what? If if the president of the United States is saying you can do that when you're a star, why isn't Al Franken allowed to grab a woman's breast?
Why isn't Harvey Weinstein allowed to do it? Why isn't Bill Cosby allowed to do it?
Why wasn't Bill Cosby allowed to drug women?
Tell you why.
Because it's fucking wrong.
That's Huckabee Sanders.
She does her job so well. I don't like her, but she does her job so well. Like, I don't know how she does it with a straight face, man. I really don't.
But I mean,
she's earning her paycheck. Good for her.
She is definitely earning the tax dollars that somehow Congress allocated for that. I think we should actually.
But yeah, this is the fourth topic, right? Sexual harassment. Okay, so take it away, Joe.
It is such a huge, huge issue in America, and I feel like every single day I go on Facebook or I turn on the TV or I go to work and I see the news, whether it's Fox, CNN, NBC, whatever, New Jersey 12. There seems like it's either a mass shooting or another celebrity or famous person being accused of sexual harassment. And men and women and everyday Americans are now put in this position where every single day we have to judge someone or decide, do we believe this or do we believe that? And we've always known. We're going to college. They talk about sexual harassment during orientations, or you go to a workplace and they have sexual harassment seminars and things to make sure that employees and coworkers treat each other with respect. It's not like this is something new, but all of a sudden, because everything is politicized, it's got to be a tit for tat. You go after a Republican for sexual harassment, you got to find a Democrat to go after. And so many women in this country and a strong handful of men are sexually harassed on a regular basis, and they are voiceless and they are unheard and nobody's paying attention to them. And yesterday, I conducted several interviews of women that I know,
which will be up on the links. Will be up, right?
We're going to post the links to the 4 recorded interviews. I had one phone interview where I had to take notes, but I talked to women from very young age to older women who've worked in all different industries and have been in different political spectrums. You have liberals and you have conservatives, and they all pretty much say the same thing. Most of these women understand that no matter what they do, the very fact that they are a woman working near men will inevitably invite some comment or some harassment, if you will. But most of these women agree that harassment is interpretive. It's how the woman feels about it. It's how whether or not she feels offended by it, and whether or not the action continues. So to this aspect, I defend Al Franken. I believe that a person who is contrite, who's apologized, who's had their apology accepted, and who has admitted the mistake and also done so much work to make things better for women,
And he wants to investigate himself, right?
and is willing to cooperate with an investigation, that to me does not come across as sexual harassment. And I know as a man and as a room full of men right now, perhaps we shouldn't be wholeheartedly going at these topics, just like I don't believe a room full of men should be deciding women's health issues.
Should not.
But that's why I conducted these interviews. And I gotta say, after talking to these 5 women, I do feel different as a man. I do feel a little bit more aware of the things that I say and do. You know, I'm 30 years old. I've made crude jokes before, but at the same time, like I mentioned to you earlier before the show started, you know, men do this kind of stuff to everybody, not just women. It just so happens that because men and women are the way they are, that the way that we interact with them oftentimes gets sexualized, whether it was intended or not. And when you interact with your homie, your boy, your bro, you know, you punch him in the shoulder, you ball tap him, you hit him on the ass or whatever, you flick
After
him in the
touchdown.
nose. Yeah, you know, that kind of stuff. It happens, and nobody ever says that that's harassment.
Yeah.
You know, so I ask some of these women the most important question at the very end of every interview. I ask them, do you believe? And I'll ask you both this, and I would love to hear, you know, what you have to say. Do you believe that what men say to women when they objectify, sexualize, when they ask them questions, show them pictures, suggest things, do you think that that falls under the purview of free speech? Do you think that is something that if a person is allowed to say, I don't want to bake a cake for you because you're homosexual, or if they don't like the fact that you're black and they don't want to serve you or do, I mean, obviously there are laws on the books that say you can't discriminate like that, but there are so many, you know, white nationalists marching down streets with signs saying white power, or that the blacks need to go, or the Westboro Baptists running around saying God hates homosexuals and stuff. That is protected free speech to a degree. So is the very fact that a woman is in the presence of a man give him the auspice to say anything? Does he have free speech under the Constitution of the United States to say what he wants without being civilly penalized for it, or losing his job, or losing his career, everything he's worked for because of one instance or 2 or 3?
All right, so I'll take this one first. I think the freedom of speech doesn't give you the freedom to be stupid, but it does give you the freedom to speech. So with that being said, I think anyone can say whatever they want. And like you said before, I guess it's perception, how that other person takes it, and that would label it harassment or not. But I also don't think that speech translates into physical touching or using your power. Because a lot of people, like Louis C.K., right? Something I read about him was, I didn't understand it. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. Maybe it's just the way he apologized. But he said, I didn't understand at that moment how my status and my celebrity could have forced their response. Because apparently he asked and they said yes. And then to him, that's consent. But the point is that, you know, if your job is on the line, or if a celebrity and someone in power tells you do something, can you really just say no? And I think that crosses a line, and I don't know where free speech lands in that, because like you said, there's things that protect hate crimes. You know, you can't be a racist, you can't discriminate for sexual preference in most states. Some states are different. It's a touchy subject, and again, I you know, as a room full, yeah, with a pun, in a room full of men, it's kind of hard to discuss. We are planning on having a more conversation with women in the room, hopefully, and that will happen soon. It's hard. I mean, it's the thing that really got to me right now recently is the hashtag Me Too. You know, everything going on social media, and almost every woman on my Facebook had something to say, and that's sad. And again, I'm a 30-year-old male. I've said crude jokes. I might have insulted or made someone feel something out there. And if that's the case, I apologize. But I think it's a societal problem. I think it's, you know, men are fortunately raised in a certain way in this country and in other societies where, you know, you get what you want when you're a man. You're expected whatever. And sometimes females are, you know, are looked differently. And sometimes they're even expected to accept some of this and be okay with some of it when it's not. It's not. And it's going to start with someone. It has to start with someone, but it has to be a bigger overall societal change before it changes. It's good that all these people are being called out now because it's being brought out to light. In the political aspect of everything, Roy Moore, Al Franken, there's big differences. But I mean, we have someone who's being accused of pedophile running in Alabama. being backed by his supporters, being backed by the evangelical and Christians in
And the
Alabama.
governor, Kay Ivey,
And
says
yeah,
that she knows that it's wrong, that if he's a
what-
child molester,
but
it's
it's been
bad,
4 decades and blah blah
but
blah.
that she would rather vote for a
Him.
child molester than a Democrat.
Which is
I mean, that's just you putting the
again,
party before children,
it
before their
speaks
safety.
it speaks again to the divisiveness in our country right now, and honestly, I don't have an answer how it's going to change or what, personally from us changing our behaviors as men, and hopefully,
you becoming a parent.
I have a son, Steve has a son, and raising them the right way so the next generation behaves in a better and correct way. Aside from that, I don't know what's going to happen. There's so many things ingrained in our society, in our culture, that allows people to feel that some of this behavior may be okay and acceptable when again it is not. And that's really all I have to add on this until we have that bigger conversation with some women in the room. I guess Steve, what would you answer his question with the free speech, and how do you feel about the sexual harassment in the media now?
I think it's important to understand.
You haven't said "here's the thing" in a long time. I'm getting kind of worried about you.
Here's the thing. No, but more seriously, I think that it's important to have these conversations, but I also I get concerned when people's careers are sort of ended from only accusations. So that's one side of it, and I think it's important to have that conversation, but also not let that take away from the idea that if you were harassed, if you were assaulted, if you were worse, then people should give you
the benefit of the doubt.
A small note on the
so I don't know. I think there is a pendulum that swings. I've said this before on one of the other shows, but I wonder if there will be an overcorrection, whereas we make an accusation and then end someone's career, because it's very easy for us to come up and say all men are terrible, right? And I don't know if that will really. I don't know how instructive that is to get to the heart of this issue. If we're just going to be self-deprecating.
Well, but my question though was, do you think that it falls under the same purview as free speech, that it's in the same, or is in the same category as racist hate talk or anything like that? Do you believe that what men say about women is their freedom to express themselves?
Yes, but it is also society's freedom to do whatever they feel after that. See, a lot of people get this confused with free speech. They think
I like that.
Me too.
I have free speech, therefore I can say whatever I want, but
no repercussion.
Your free speech doesn't matter because you need to respect my free speech, and that's not the way it works. So I can say, fuck you, Joe. You have every right to come back and say, fuck you, Steve. Right? So let's not confuse the two. But I think when we're how do we create an environment where victims can feel safe and comfortable to call out the injustices that have happened to them, and also how can we
properly go through due process for people being accused, and not just prosecuting them in the media and having careers tank and people's lives destroyed only based on accusations.
Right, but there's one more thing I want to add to this, because again, I am not qualified to make any judgments on this. I can only tell people what I think. I think it's important to understand when we see these happen. And this is why I don't think it's important. I think it is reductive to say that all men are sexist, or all men are trash, right? But these instances of someone's masturbating in front of someone, another person is throwing a 14-year-old on a bed, another person is stalking malls for underage children,
and then being banned from the malls.
Like these are not normal things. These are not the things that normal guys do. So I do think that it's important not to say that because these things are happening that all men everywhere are predators or are contributing to rape culture. That said, I do find I find it very interesting that these stories come out and they get a certain momentum to them, and everyone needs to fall in line. And so, if you say, "Well, I just want to," we should investigate this, then somehow that you're tacitly victim blaming, or
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, so it's a fine line to tiptoe around, and right
but,
now,
but right, I don't think that it is socially acceptable now to say, "Hey, that this thing a person is making an accusation. Let's go and get to the facts of this." I think if you say that now, in the back of people's minds, people think that you support that culture, and it doesn't mean that.
yeah,
One of the things specifically that we're talking, I want to tie together. We talked about Bannon and Breitbart and why he went private and these things like that. With Al Franken's situation, and there are so many. We got the Cosbys, the O'Reillys, the Weinsteins, and the CKs, and all these people. But the
Kevin Spacey.
And Kevin Spacey. But the one outlier here is Al Franken. This is a man who has spent an entire career trying to do what's best for people, who is a supporter of women's rights, who often speaks to their defense, and a woman comes out accusing him of kissing her forcefully and of making a very bad joke of pantomiming grabbing her breasts. One thing that I wanted to point out, specifically because the Breitbart is coordinating a lot of things like this, is, Leanne Tweeden, while I do believe her that she may have felt harassed or may have felt uncomfortable or offended, she understood what she was getting into. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean so much that she signed an agreement saying that she knew what the plot of the show was going to be, that she was going to be kissed by the Al Franken character. Whether or not she knew that he was pantomiming a joke with a picture that's been around since 2006, I'm sure she knew about it. But the timing is a little off, because she's making this circuit around these news agencies well after she's accepted the apology. Now she's on The View reading the apology, and she's doing all these things where she's going after him, but not. She appears on Hannity many times, and everybody that knows anything about the political talking heads is that Hannity is a very far right-reaching, half-truthy proponent of Donald Trump. And even he understood that because Roy Moore was almost impossible to defend, that you have to find something else. You got to have the quid pro quo, the tit for tat.
Yeah.
So after the Hannity basically came out about Roy Moore and saying it's likely that he's guilty, they have her coming, and the timing of it, and reports coming out of Breitbart at the same time, is that she basically it's a like Roy Moore said, it's a political inside hit job. It's not so much a hit job as a loosely coordinated attack on someone to delegitimize the attacks on the right.
Okay.
You say that a good person like Al Franken can do this, so it's not as bad that Roy Moore's doing it. I mean, she signed the paper saying that acknowledging that this kiss would happen. That the picture has his hands hovering over her breasts. Obviously, that's a crude joke. He's admitted to that being a crude joke, but she's dressed up like a soldier. She's wearing Kevlar. There was no actual assault, nor was there a chance that assault was going to actually take place. He admits it was a crude joke. Most people understand it. Most women understand it.
Yeah.
Any of the women that I interviewed agreed that an apology is acceptable so long as that behavior doesn't continue. And if between the past 12 years, what else has come out except that she and obviously a Trump supporter and a Fox News contributor and someone who's appeared on the show before, she is basically making it like a game.
Mm-hmm. I think.
I mean, it's so, and this is the problem. I think I don't like I understand every point you made, but what will happen? Like everything that you just said, and you laid it out, that can be viewed as victim blaming.
Oh yeah, of course. And everything is victim blaming if you are not the victim or the accuser.
And it might be taken that way by some of our viewers, and I really hope that that's not how we feel.
And this is why I thought it's important that we have, and why we want to do the show
with women
next week.
Yeah,
where we can have people on, where we'll have people call in, hopefully through Skype. We'll try to
Or
get
have
that
someone here in
working.
person and
Yes,
they can make it
absolutely.
out. Yeah, we
That's
hope
what I
so. We
want.
hope
But
that's yeah,
I want multiple points of view.
yeah,
But I think that, and John Oliver talked about the idea of whataboutism and the slippery slope that it leads to, which is we're talking about Roy Moore, and now we're talking about Al Franken. So you muddy the waters in a way to say that nothing matters.
Well, that's what I just said.
Yeah, that's no, I'm agreeing with you, but what I'm saying is that that slippery slope will take us to a point where anything is acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And
Well,
the
I mean,
theoretical shooting someone on Fifth Ave could become an actual thing.
it could end up like the Purge, where we find it
Yeah.
acceptable. But to what you said about me, what I just said, possibly being interpreted as victim blaming, when you see so much of it every single day, and they're diluting everything, it's almost like they're trying to make people numb to it. And now everything that comes out from here on out, or from a couple months ago on out after the Me Too hashtag, it's almost like people just scroll right past it. Just like if there's not a mass shooting with more than 10 people in it, it almost gets no coverage.
This reminds me of a scene. I started watching Punisher. I'm almost halfway through. And there's a scene in which Agent Madani says that, she's talking about 9/11 and what happens in Afghanistan. People like to forget. It's easier to forget and to ignore and to act like it hasn't happened.
Second episode.
Yeah, just to jump into it.
It's always about that shiny new
Yeah,
thing.
and I think that's again a problem in society, a problem that it's not easily fixed. But I think the only answer I have now, until we have the bigger conversation with women here, is if you see something, say something.
That's the same thing you're supposed to do with terrorism and book bags left unattended. But what I was trying to get to the point about the saying that it's victim blaming, but anybody that says anything different than what the accuser says is somehow blaming the victim. It's not victim blaming.
It's just exploring
asking,
everything.
It's asking you, do you really, really believe that that's harassment? I mean, I asked all these women, like, where is it? And every one of them said it's a spectrum. It's how you interpret it.
Yeah.
So if she interpreted that, despite the fact that she was asleep, or despite the fact that she signed a contract or whatever, if she interpreted it as harassment, then she's well within her rights to say it is. But was that aggressive? Was that something that should be pursued? Something that's punishable? It's not victim blaming to ask you, did it really hurt you all that much? If you get punched in the face, it probably hurts a lot. But if someone flicks you in the cheek, should you be able to sue them for damages and assault?
Yeah.
It's not victim blaming to ask, where does this fall in the spectrum, and are you doing this more for your own personal gain so that you can make the circuits on TV? The Roy Moore accusers, are they saying that so that they can be on TV for a little bit? I don't believe that. I believe that you've got people after 40 years of living in fear that they were going to receive.
They saw a way out.
They finally found a way out because now everybody's talking about it. But then you get the people that come out of the woodwork and say, oh, I remember like 15 years ago, this guy touched my butt or whatever, and that was harassment, and I feel really bad. There's no emotion behind it. There's no reason to say that you are a victim necessarily. Then you are just a person who had this thing happen to them. It's always happened since the beginning of time. And like every one of these women that I asked during the interview, it's going to perpetuate. It's going to continue. And one of my interviewees actually said it pretty eloquently, that it's going to continue forever, just like racism will continue forever. You will never ever end racism, just like you will never end sexism, and just like you will that sexual harassment in whatever form it manifests and whatever interpretation on the spectrum it manifests, it's always going to be there. So when you talk about a victim, you have to take that word and ask, what do you mean by the word victim? Are you really a victim?
Yeah.
Or are you somebody who something happened to and then that's it?
I hear you. I guess I just worry that, it's easier for us who have not experienced this. Like, we don't know how anything affects another person, right? So if someone legitimately, it may be okay for you, because these things are all relative. So a thing that may not have bothered you, I could make a joke about you right now, and we know each other, and it is the context of the relationship, and so that joke will be okay. But someone else could make that joke to you, and it will be completely offensive.
The weight of the word victim.
Right, but it's not for the outsider to say, well, you should.
If they want the outsider to judge, if they want the outsider to be the judge and jury, then it absolutely is the outsider's opinion does matter. If you want to accuse someone and have cameras in your face and be on the record and have news stories and be on The View and you want to be interviewed, then you're absolutely inviting people to judge that situation and to ask you those questions. Just like it's insulting that Roy Moore will not answer questions. He will not debate his opponent. He will not appear. He has his wife and these other women that are speaking vicariously for him, but he's not actually doing it himself. So absolutely, we as the viewer, as the public, as the people that live in a democracy, have every right to weigh the word victim and to weigh accusations versus assaults versus just general harassment or versus a one-off situation like with Al Franken.
Well, but I do think we kind of, and again, I'm with Al Franken all the way, and I actually think that as a comedian, you have some leeway, and I think that the kiss was scripted and they rehearsed it, and in that moment, maybe she felt that the rehearsal was too forceful, and that's fine. That said, here's the thing I worry about. The thing that gets lost in these things. You know, we tend to, as human beings, say, you know, I empathize with Al Franken because we agree politically on some or most things, and so I'll give Al Franken the benefit of the doubt, but I always thought Roy Moore was an asshole, so when some accusation comes up, I'm more inclined to believe it, right? And so the accuser of Al Franken, I'm gonna look for holes in her story. And this is a subconscious thing. A lot of people think that people do things maliciously, and I don't think that it's malicious at all. I just think that because we all belong to certain tribes in certain respects, to varying degrees, but I do think that we will be more tuned into the people that we agree with and empathize with. Mm-hmm. So we're looking to say, well, this is okay because, or let's look at this some more, but because we like this person. If it's somebody we don't like, throw them under the bus.
Yeah, that's human tendency, and
you said it too earlier. Due process.
Yeah,
everybody should get their due process.
I mean, again, I'm excited for to have that episode, to have that conversation, and I really think that with different perspectives here and the right perspectives here, we'll have a more in-depth conversation, because we could go in circles about this all day. What's wrong? What's right? What's acceptable? Right now, triangle. But with that being said, I think it's time to wrap
pretty
up.
Much where you end a conversation like that, because then you really just start going into these nuances. Like we keep using that word nuance for some reason. I think you kept saying it, and now it's stuck in my head.
I was.
Or you said somebody kept saying nuances, and it was stuck in my head. So, let's call this the end of this time.
We should call the episode Nuances, right? Or something like that, right?
This is not the end of the conversation. This is not going to go away. I mean, this is a weekly podcast, and we like to talk about the things that happen during the week. So, just like I said before, I feel like every day we're just seeing something else and something else, and it's going to. I mean, you got Jeffrey Tambor even now this afternoon. He's 73, and people are saying whatever.
And George Bush.
Campaign, I want you guys to think about this. The aim of the campaign.
Yeah.
Right? Now think about the other, when we're talking about, piling on and everyone having a story and the momentum of something going viral on social. Everybody's like, me too. I just find
it's bandwagoning. Yeah.
Well, I mean, in a way, it's kind of me too. Pay attention to me for 5 seconds. But, well, speaking of paying attention to us for 5 seconds, we are really happy for anybody that makes it to the hour, or in the case of episode 3, the 2-hour mark, for watching the show.
Yep.
We do plan on going live sometime this week.
I'm thinking sometime between Wednesday and Thursday we'll be going live, so it's you'll be seeing some promotional material.
If you're watching this now, we're live.
We're live, yeah. So if you're watching this now, we're live. But so thank you for watching. You can follow me at J Martinez Jr. On Twitter. We just created a Twitter page, so you can follow it at the second page, the 2ND page. And Joe, where can we follow you?
Yeah, well, you can follow me on whatever name it says below my face right now, because honestly, I'm not the
Joseph S. Oswald.
I'm not the biggest social media guy. I'm more of a pad of paper and pen kind of person.
And how about you, Steve? Where can we follow?
Where do we find Steve besides in this basement?
Find me at Steve AM Johnson on your favorite social media network, as long as it's not Snapchat. You can also watch me on, if you're into movies and TV news, and
Which we
movie
all are.
reviews, you can find me on our other show on the R Squared Network, On the Reel.
REEL.
Yes, REEL. Yes, that is correct. But we do reviews. We talk about the news topic of the week, and we sort of have fun games that we're getting ready to do. All vote on the top 5 animated films of all time. So
Sweet. It's a good show. I've seen a good amount of episodes, and
yeah, if you need a break from the political talking and stuff like that, I know we try to be as lighthearted as we can with certain things, but if you need a break, switch over, find something else. And at the same time, we encourage all of the viewers, no matter what your political spectrum or background or anything, to comment, to tweet, to ask questions, and we'll do our best to respond to them. Obviously, we will not be accepting applications for trolls, so if you're just going to comment just to be a douche, then we will probably delete that. And not to say we're censoring anything, but, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Anyway, do what you got to do.
And with that being said, we'll see you guys next week.
Right.
Have a good one.
Bye.